In 2013, an armed home attack was so violent that it killed a woman who was there alone. But let us start at the beginning before we get to that. On January 9, 1992, Destiny Renee Pitman came into the world to Melvin Old Douglas Jr. and Carla A. Pitman McCombs. Her brothers and sisters were Brandon McCombs, Seth Pickett, Cheyenne McCombs, and Mackenzie Douglas. They all grew up in the same house in Kokomo, which was full of happiness and joy. Destiny was 21 years old in 2013. She had moved out of her parents' house but was still living in Kokomo. She shared an apartment with a friend in the 800 block of James Drive. She also had a boyfriend with whom she had been together for over a year, but the world did not know who he was. But both Destiny and her boyfriend had a bad habit. They both sold marijuana to make a little extra cash, and this business brought them into touch with some dangerous people. On February 7, 2013, Destiny, her boyfriend, and her neighbor were having a relaxing night at their apartment in the 800 block of James Drive. They did not have anything to do that night, so they were looking forward to a quiet night at home. They had no idea that chaos was about to break out all around them. Around 9:20 p.m. that night, there was a commotion outside their door. Destiny went outside to see what was going on. A few seconds later, her boyfriend and roommate heard angry yelling and someone asking where something was. Then they heard a loud gunshot, which scared them both, so they ran inside and hid. The thieves then broke into the house, but luckily they did not find the boyfriend or the roommate, so they left quickly. At 9:33 p.m., the Kokomo Police Department got a call about a shooting at 800 James Drive. When they got there, they found Destiny dead outside her apartment, bleeding from a single gunshot wound to her chest. They found a single .40 caliber shell casing at the scene and found that the bullet went straight through Destiny and hit the wall behind her. When the cops asked her boyfriend and roommate about the invaders, they found out that the two of them had only seen the men's shoes. When asked if they knew why the robbery happened, Destiny's boyfriend told the police that he had sold marijuana and taken a bag with weed and over $2,000 in cash to another house just days before the home invasion. He also told them that Destiny had her own business selling pot, but that she was selling less of it now that she had gotten some money from an inheritance. The police noticed that Destiny's stash of marijuana and cash was gone from her apartment and realized that the robbery was probably the main reason why she was killed. After that, they looked at people who used to buy weed from Destiny and her boyfriend, but none of these possible suspects turned out to be true during the investigation. The study came to an end when the clues stopped leading anywhere. The case went cold for 9 long years, and police had no idea how they would ever find new suspects because there was so little proof and information. But on December 5, 2022, they got a new lead out of the blue. They got a message from a person who said they knew something about who killed Destiny Pitman. The informant said that on the night Destiny was killed, they were with 2 brothers, Joey McCartney and Jesse McCartney. They said that these 2 brothers were the ones who killed Destiny and stole from him that night. The informant then told the police what had happened that night. The informant said that Jesse and Joey told him they were running errands and that he went with them. The informant said that they were sitting in Jesse McCartney's Jeep in front of the James Drive apartment when both Paul and Linda McCartney got out of the car and went inside. After hearing a gunshot, the informant saw both men run out of the house. Jesse seemed to be very sweaty and was holding a big bag of marijuana and a wad of cash in each hand. The informant also told the police about Jesse's gun and said that 6 months after that night, Jesse had sold his gun and his Jeep to hide his tracks. The informant also took the police to the exact house where the murder happened and showed them where the suspects had been waiting in the car and which apartment the McCartney had gone into. The informant told the police that they did not come forward sooner because they were afraid of Jesse, but that the guilt of knowing what had happened was too much and they had to tell the truth. They also told the police that Jesse McCartney's phone number had changed, but that he still lived on Monroe Street in Kokomo. They also told the police where Joey McCartney was and that he lived in Kentucky at the moment. Using all of this information, detectives from the Kokomo Police Department and the U.S. Marshals caught the brothers Jesse and Joey McCartney for killing Destiny Pitman in February 2023. The brothers have said that they are not guilty, so the case will now go to court. Our next case takes us across the North Atlantic to Cologne, the largest city in the western German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. On February 14, 1988, many people in Cologne woke up to a bright morning. On the Sunday of the Cologne Street Carnival, the parade was going on. People were happy and enjoying the party, which was taking place in a small spot behind a beer stand. However, 24-year-old Petra Nohl lay like a broken doll behind the beer stand, where she had been strangled by an unknown person. Petra Nohl was a young single mother who lived with her parents and her 1-year-old daughter. At the time, she had split up with the father of her daughter and was raising the child on her own. The night before her body was found, on February 13, 1988, she chose to take some time for herself and go to the carnival with friends to have fun. She and 2 of her friends had spent the night out at a club called Charivari. Charivari was in the busy tourist village of Bierdorf, which was full of pubs and shops. It was in the basement of a mall that used to be called Lahrenstedt, but is now called Operon-Passagen. On February 14, Petra decided she wanted to go to another club called Big Ben. She did not have enough money, so she borrowed 100 German marks from a friend and left to go to Big Ben. Regrettably, she never reached her destination. Instead, on the morning of the parade, police officers and forensic experts stood around her body, while the parade was in full swing just a few meters away near the Shaw in Wittosek. Even though the parade did not get canceled because of the horrible thing that happened, that area was blocked off, and the cops made sure that no spectators got there by accident or otherwise. The murder of Petra Nohl, which has never been solved, was thought to be one of the most important crimes in Cologne's history. For a while, the agents followed up on every clue they could find. But unfortunately, they all went nowhere and gave us no new information or leads. The case was considered closed. It seemed like Petra Nohl would never get justice and that her family would never be at peace. Investigators could not figure out what was going on with the case for 34 years. How come no one had noticed anything out of the ordinary? There would have been sounds of a fight for sure. How was it that no one heard anything? Even 34 years after Petra's murder, these questions kept bothering the police. Her case was looked into again with the help of a special building at the State Criminal Police Office of North Rhine-Westphalia called VAO Cold Cases. On December 7, 2022, the crime show Aktenzeichen XY on ZDF also talked about the case. This turned out to be the clue that the police were looking for. After the show was over, 5 people called with new information. Invigorated by the idea that Petra's killer would finally be brought to justice, they carefully and thoroughly looked into all the leads. In the end, this led to a useful tip from a possible witness, which helped the police catch a suspect. In December 2022, when the case was talked about on the Aktenzeichen XY show, a man at the Munich recording studio came forward right away as a witness. During the show, the people in charge in Cologne did not waste any time getting in touch with him. During his questions, he gave a detailed account of what happened that night. On February 14, 1988, it was the early morning of Carnival Saturday. He and a friend had a good time at the beer village and the Charivari bar. Petra Nohl was also there on Saturday to celebrate Carnival. As the time for the crime got closer, he remembered that he wanted to go home, and so did his friend. The 2 guys in tuna straws went to a taxi stand at the same time and in the same way. There they met Petra Nohl and started talking to her in a friendly way. Because of the carnival, there were hardly any cabs available, so the group moved on to Neumark, where they hoped to find cabs. As they walked and talked, the 2 friends split up because they had to wait a long time for a cab. The witness stayed at the stand while his friend went with Petra toward Neumark. The next day, the news talked about the murder. When the witness heard what had happened, he or she wanted to go to the cops and tell them what had happened the night before. At the time, his friend was very against it and tried to tell the witness that nothing good would come of it. The witness did not say anything to the cops because he did not want to hurt his friend's feelings. The witness watched the show 34 years after it first aired. After 34 years, the two men were also no longer friends. When he saw a picture of Petra, he knew right away who she was and came forward to say so. Even though he told the police exactly what happened that night, he did not want to give them his friend's name at first. The cops talked to the witness and got him to agree to do what they wanted. Forensics came forward with information that helped them understand what was going on better. According to fiber traces found on Petra, the killer probably wore a black leather jacket, stone-washed jeans, and cognac brown shoes, which could have been cowboy boots. The neck pouch that was in Nohl's black bag was missing. The bag probably had the 100 Deutsche Marks she borrowed from a friend. And it might have also had tokens for drinks at the Bierdorf Cologne. On February 14, 2023, exactly 34 years after Petra Nohl was killed, cops in the Cologne district of Bilderstock arrested a 56-year-old man they thought might have done it. No one knows the suspect's name yet. During the first questioning, the suspect said that he could not remember killing anyone, but his DNA sample matched the DNA found on the victim. The suspect did not know Petra, so the police figured that he probably did it out of greed. At the time, he was 21 and too drunk and greedy to know any better. At the moment, the suspect is denying that he did anything wrong, but he did not try to fight his arrest. Now that he has been caught, he will be charged with murder, and Petra's family can finally start the long, hard road to peace. In the east-central part of the U.S. state of Alabama, Opelika is the county seat of Lee County. In 2012, something scary was found in this town of more than 30,000 people. On January 28, 2012, Yvonne Johnson called the cops to tell them that her son had found something strange while he was cleaning up the yard. When the cops got to the scene in Opelika, Alabama's Brookhaven Trailer Park, they were shocked to find the skull of a toddler. When they looked in an area just a few miles away, they found a few bones and a small bundle of curly hair behind a trailer in the next lot. A pink long-sleeved shirt was found in a nearby creek, which gave the cops more information. It had flowery ruffles around the collar and tiny heart buttons. The bones were from a child who was likely between 4 and 7 years old. Since the case was both hard and complicated, the cops started with the basics. The FBI sent her body parts to a lab in Quantico, Virginia, to try to figure out who she was and get an autopsy report. The sad part of the story was still going on. The report said that the remains belonged to a 4 to 7-year-old African-American girl who had received blunt force trauma that caused more than 15 fractures in her skull, legs, arms, ribs, and shoulders. Not only that, but she was also very undernourished and showed signs of being abused, as her old wounds had already healed. She seemed to have a broken eye socket in her left eye, which made the forensic team think that she was blind in her left eye. Her murder-suicide-like death probably happened between the summers of 2010 and 2011. No matter how hard the cops looked, they could not find the baby's family. That is when the unnamed child became known as Opelika's baby Jane Doe, and everyone in the town loved her. After the detectives shared the information with the public, everyone tried to find the answers, but the case's secrets remained hidden. In 2016, after almost 4 years, a picture of a girl who might have been Jane Doe came to light. The cops noticed that the picture was taken around 2011 at the Bible school at Opelika's Greater Peace Baptist Church. The place seemed like a good fit. The child looked like she had not been cared for, and she had an obvious defect in her eye. The dates also made sense. They saw a glimmer of hope. They thought that they would finally be able to find the family of baby Jane Doe. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not find the baby in the picture. The child's teacher could not remember her name, but she did remember that she was quiet, liked to be alone, and had trouble talking to other people. The church had not started registering students properly yet, so they did not have any information about the child. So, the police did the next best thing, which was to fix up the grainy, low-quality pictures that the church had given them and put them online so that someone could help them. The cops even tried to get help with DNA testing, but the condition of her body did not let them do that. The cops had no choice but to keep looking into the case while they waited for information from the public. Even after 10 years, no one knew who baby Jane Doe was. Between 2012 and 2022, the cops looked through more than 15,000 case files to try to find out who baby Jane Doe was, but they were all for nothing. Even though there were a lot of tips, neither the baby nor the person who killed her could be found. In January 2022, when DNA technology got better, the agents hoped they could get to the bottom of things. Bottom Laboratories and Astroforensics used the sample of her scalp and hair to make a DNA analysis. The famous Dr. Barbara Ray Venter was in charge of the science case. With the help of DNA genealogy, Dr. Barbara was finally able to find out that Lamar Vickerstaff was the father of baby Jane in October 2022. He was born and raised in Opelika, Alabama. While he was in the U.S. Navy, he lived in Honolulu, Norfolk, and Jacksonville. After this was found out, the cops went straight to the Mayport Naval Station in Jacksonville, where Lamar was stationed at the time, to tell him that his daughter had died, but he was not there. After several hours of waiting, the cops finally found him. He did not tell the police anything about who baby Jane Doe was. The cops then talked to Ruth Vickerstaff, who had been his wife since 2006. She told the cops that she did not know either Lamar's daughter or the mother of Lamar's daughter. Even though they had tried so many times and failed, the cops did not give up. In 2006, they figured out that baby Jane Doe's mother was Amore Wiggins, who was 37 years old and from Norfolk, Virginia. She said that the baby was her daughter, named Amore Wiggins, who was born in 2006. This case still had more twists and turns to come. Sherry did not know that her daughter, for whom she had been paying child support for years, had been lost for more than a decade. So she told the police everything that had happened since Amore was born in 2006. Sherry and Lamar Vickerstaff lived in the same apartment complex, and the two of them started dating right away. Sherry found out she was pregnant one day, so they moved in together. But the Vickerstaff family did not like that he had a baby before he got married, since they were not planning to get married anytime soon. Lamar's constant upset about his family led him to eventually behave meanly towards Sherry. Consequently, Sherry made the decision to take action and leave. Amore Wiggins was born on January 1, 2006, in Norfolk, Virginia. Sherry chose the name Amore, which signifies love in Spanish, as the child was a bundle of affection and smiles. Amore was a happy child who did not cry much. Lamar did not seem to care that she was smart and unique. He had nothing to do with Amore's early life. Sherry tried to get full control of her child, so she went to court. Lamar had already married Ruth that same year, 2006. Sherry said she had done a lot of wrong things around that time. She had been charged with misdemeanors, which did not help her at all. In 2009, Amore's father was given formal custody of her, and Sherry was not even given a visitation allowance. She tried to fight this decision for years by going to court. In 2013, she was told that she could no longer go to court. Sherry had to wait. She could not wait until Amore turned 18 so she could finally meet her. Sherry told the police that she could not be a part of her daughter's upbringing, but she had been paying child support since 2009 to help financially support her daughter, and she was happy to do whatever she could to be a part of Amore's life. She had no idea that Amore's own father would be the one to kill her. After learning all of this, the cops tried to contact school boards and pediatric clinics in the states where Lamar had lived before and in the states next to them. They did not find any records that showed Amore had never been enrolled in a school or reported missing. On January 17, 2023, Lamar Vickerstaff was arrested for felony murder, and his wife Ruth Vickerstaff was arrested for not reporting a missing person. The police made a strong case against the Vickerstaffs. During the trial, it came out that Lamar Vickerstaff had admitted to killing Amore Wiggins on tape. He did not want anything bad to happen to his wife, Ruth. They also found out that Ruth had once called Child Protective Services without giving her name. Later, she told Lamar that the child was too much for her, and she asked him to give Amore to someone else in his family. Lamar was trying to make a deal with the police by giving them these details in return for them letting his wife go free. Then, Lamar took Amore from Virginia, where he was stationed at the time, to Opelika, and just drove around without saying anything else about how he killed her. Lamar told the cops he tried to bring her back to life. Lamar had to stay in jail without a bond, and Ruth had to wear an ankle monitor and stay in Duval County. They will have to go before a grand jury. The department will tell the public when that will be. If found guilty, Lamar could get life in jail without parole or even the death penalty. Ruth could get up to 10 years in prison. The police asked people to come forward with information about Amore Wiggins, an innocent child who did not have a happy life and whose father killed her in a brutal way. On January 19, 2023, baby Jane Doe in Opelika was officially named Amore Jove Wiggins by teary-eyed cops who had been working on her case for years. In 2023, she would have been 17 years old. Sherry thought she would see her daughter in a year, but when the cops came to her door, they told her that Amore had been dead for more than 10 years. In February 2023, Sherry set up a memorial for her daughter. In honor of her name, Amore, everyone came dressed in pink and red. The happy mother proudly announced that her daughter's name was Amore Wiggins. She proceeded to recite a heartfelt poem about her daughter, expressing her longing to hold Amore's hand and kiss her cheek as a demonstration of the immense love she felt. Detective Alfred White, who had never given up on Amore's case, also attended the funeral. He conveyed to her the Opelika Police Department's deep regard for her and the genuine care they had for her well-being. He expressed, "Amore, we love you. The entire department loves you. Even if you did not hear it from those who had you before, please know that you can hear it from us. We love you." Geelong is a beautiful city in the state of Victoria on the western coast of Australia. This city has beautiful beaches, lush parks, and a lively cultural scene that brings people from all over the world. It is known as one of the best places to visit in Australia because of its beautiful scenery and long past. Geelong seems like a peaceful place on the outside, but it has a darker side. In 1992, a young woman named Annette Steward was killed, which sent shockwaves through this city. The horrible crime sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, making people nervous and afraid. Even though there were a lot of investigations, the person who did it was still at large, and the case went cold. It has been haunting the city for over 30 years. Annette Steward was born to Roy and Margaret Steward in Australia in 1963. She lived with her two sisters, Gillian and Jeanette, when she was a child. She was very close to both of them. Their house was filled with love and laughter, and their parents were crazy about their 3 girls. She had her first child, a girl named Ninja Cinta. Ninja Cinta was the apple of her eye. She had another child, a boy she named Aaron. She raised them on her own and worked at the Point Henry ammunition factory to make sure they had a good life. In 1992, the 3 of them lived together in a house on Geelong West's Hope Street. This is where the incident would happen, which is sad. On March 18, 1992, Annette's friend went to her house because he could not reach her. After calling out and not hearing an answer, they went into Nette's room to see if she was there. What they saw would always be with them. They saw Annette's naked body lying on the bed in a way that did not make sense, and it was clear that she was dead. Shockingly, they called the cops, and the investigation started right away. As the investigation into Annette Steward's death began, it was found that the 29-year-old had left work at Point Henry at 4:30 p.m., the day before her dead body was found in her home. There was also DNA from a different country at the crime scene, but no one ever said what kind of DNA it was. As the police looked into the case more, they asked Annette's family and friends for information. During these conversations, they found out something shocking. The night before Annette's body was found, she had dinner with 4 friends at her house. The news of what had happened shocked everyone. How could 4 people have been in her house just hours before she died, and no one have noticed anything was wrong? An autopsy was finally able to show what really happened when Annette Steward died. She had been choked to death, so it was decided that it was a murder. Annette Steward's sad death not only broke the hearts of her friends and family, but it also had a big effect on her 2 kids, Jacinta and Aaron. When Jacinta's mother died, she was 13 years old. Her brother Aaron was only 10 years old. Even though the detectives working on Annette's case did their best, the truth remained hard to find. As time went on, tips stopped coming in, and the trail got cold. The case was added to the long list of riddles that have not been solved. In 2007, something sad and scary happened in the murder case of Annette. Investigators worked hard to find out what happened, and their work helped a doctor figure out that a co-worker was the main suspect. Annette was a valuable worker at the Point Henry ammunition factory. Even with this clue, justice was never done because no charges were ever brought. In 2015, there was a small sign of hope in the long-running search for justice in the murder of Annette. The Victoria Police offered a huge prize of $1 million to try to get people with information to come forward. Annette's children also made an emotional request to the public, asking anyone who knew something about their mother's death to come forward. On March 14, 2023, Darren John Chalmers, a 54-year-old man from Western Australia, was charged with killing Annette Steward in Geelong, Victoria. Reports say that Chalmers was a person of interest in the case for a long time, and in 2019, police got a DNA sample from him that matched the DNA found at the crime scene. This new information led to Chalmers' arrest and transfer from Western Australia to Victoria, so he could face charges. Chalmers used to drive a truck and lived in the Geelong area when Stewart was killed. He had never been in trouble with the law before, and Stewart did not know him. People who knew him were surprised by his arrest. They said he was a quiet, modest man. The arrest brought this case back into the spotlight and gave people hope that justice would finally be done. On March 20, 2023, authorities in Victoria placed the man in jail after he was sent there. He is set to appear before the Melbourne Magistrates Court. Chalmers has been mandated to remain in jail until his next court date in June 2023. If Chalmers is found guilty of killing Annette Steward, he could spend the rest of his life in jail. Even though it might not bring Annette back, it would give her family and friends who miss her and have been waiting for so long to see justice done a sense of peace. Harlem, an area in New York City's Upper Manhattan, is known for its small jazz clubs, soul food restaurants, and African-American history. But 1994, there was a horrible double murder here, when 57-year-old Sarah Roberts and her 26-year-old daughter, Sharon Roberts, were found dead in their apartment on February 20, 1994. It scared everyone who lived in the Grant House complex on 125th Street in Harlem, New York. Until 2023, nobody knew who did it. Sarah Roberts and her daughter, Sharon Roberts, lived apart from the rest of their family on West 125th Street in Harlem. Since Sarah had severe emphysema and Sharon had a mental disability, a nurse named Celeste Cornelius was hired to help them both. So Sarah and Sharon both depended on Celeste for a lot of things. On February 20, 1994, when Celeste got to their room on the 6th floor, she found that the door was open. She was worried about it because there had been thefts in the building before. As she went inside, she did not hear a single sound. Then Celeste ran into Sarah's room and found her dead on the bed. She ran in to check on Sharon, and to her horror, Sharon was also lying on the floor with a pair of woolen pants around her neck. Both women were dead. Celeste was so scared by what she saw that she went to get help from her friends and called 911. When the police arrived at the scene at 10:15 p.m., they saw that there were no signs of forced entry, which meant that the killer was probably someone they knew, and that the place had been ransacked in a way that showed the killer knew where the most valuable things were, which meant that the killer had been in the apartment before. Lastly, both women looked sick and weak, which means they could not have fought back. Celeste, who had found the bodies, was now the best source of information for the police. She told them that she had been caring for both of the dead women. She told the police that she had talked to Sarah the night before, around 8 o'clock. Later, she tried to get in touch with them, but they did not answer. She tried again the next morning at around noon, but she could not reach them. This made her nervous, so she went to check on them herself. What she found would be a puzzle for the next 29 years. When the autopsy report came back, it said that they were both choked to death with the tube from Sarah's oxygen tank. The official cause of death was suffocation. In order to find the killer, the police took all the evidence they could find at the crime scene. This included some cigarette butts, which would not have been in their flat if the killer had not left them. Because Sarah and Sharon were sick, the cops were not likely to find cigarettes at their house. They took a dry swab of Sharon's fluid from her hand. In addition, they took nail clippings from both corpses to look for any DNA that might belong to the killer. Since the place was totally trashed, and there were no signs of forced entry, the police thought the most likely culprit was someone Sarah and Sharon knew. They questioned the neighbors, regular visitors, and Sarah's friends. The officers talked to a neighbor who did not want to be named. She said that a week before Christmas, someone broke into Sarah and Sharon's room and stole hundreds of dollars and a VHS player with tapes. Sarah then put a third lock on her flat door. The neighbor also said that Sarah was very sick because oxygen tanks were often sent to her house, but sometimes they were sent to the neighbor's house by mistake. In fact, she needed help walking and getting around, so her guardian would hold her hand. The cops thought that the robbery and the killings were linked. They thought that the previous robbery in the apartment could have given the thief a good reason to come back and rob again. After that, there was a lot of looking into it, but nothing turned up. Even the DNA evidence did not show up in the database, so the case finally went cold. In 2022, there was a big break in the case of who killed Sarah and Sharon. The cops were able to solve a crime and catch the person who did it because technology had changed, and that is what they did. When the DNA from the crime scene was run through the national database again, it showed a perfect match to a 64-year-old man named Larry Atkinson. Atkinson lived in Harlem, just 13 blocks away from where the killings happened. On January 23, 2023, when officers from the NYPD Bronx Cold Case Squad went to his home to arrest him, they found that he was living with his long-term partner, Celeste Cornelius, who was also Sarah and Sharon's caretaker. When the killings happened in 1984, they were dating, but neither Celeste nor Larry were considered suspects at the time. The story was still going on. When the cops looked into Larry's past, they found that he had been in and out of jail since 1985 for a number of crimes. He had about 13 charges and 5 convictions for things like assault, drug use and sale, and trying to rob someone. He did his time as different people. He was in jail for 2 years for a drug crime and got out on parole in 2013. When he was arrested the last time, his DNA was sent to the national database. The cops had found the person who had killed 2 innocent, harmless, and weak women who had died in a terrible way. Larry Atkinson told the officers that he did not feel well as they were taking him to the police station. Larry had cancer. In 1994, he was arrested for killing a mother and daughter by strangling them in their Harlem apartment. He was taken to the hospital and then to the police station in a wheelchair with a breathing mask. Celeste, his partner, told her that Larry did not know about the DNA match, but he claimed that he didn't. She did not think Larry could have killed Sarah and her daughter. She emphasized her belief, making it clear that she did not want any misunderstanding. She stated that she knew he did not commit the crime. She further expressed her disinterest in the DNA or any other related evidence, confidently asserting that he was innocent. Juliet Wilson, Celeste and Larry's neighbor, said that the two had lived together for about 20 years and had never fought. She seemed to think Larry was a good person. She was surprised to hear about his arrest, but the cops did not change their minds. They still thought Larry was a cold-blooded killer. Larry was tried, even though they could not figure out why he did it or if he was let into the flat. He attempted to defend himself by stating that they had apprehended the wrong person. He added that it was fortunate that he was innocent and proclaimed, "You are not guilty." But on January 27, 2023, Judge Alethea Drysdale of the Manhattan Supreme Court charged him with killing Sarah and Sharon without giving him bail. Even though the killer is in jail and getting medical care, the case is still open and being looked into. Next, we go to Gainesville, which is in the U.S. state of Georgia. In 1989, a murder took place right here. In 1989, Mary Lucille Wilfong was living in Gainesville, Georgia, with her 3 children. She was known to take one day at a time and enjoy life. She liked hitchhiking, and most of the time, truck drivers picked her up. Her mother called her a base hopper because Mary liked going from one military base to another and dating military men. She had a happy life, but on November 21, 1989, she did not know what was coming. A group of deer shooters called the Monroe County Sheriff's Office to say that they had found a body in the woods near Johnsonville Road and I-75, about 50 miles south of Atlanta. When the cops got to the scene, they were able to figure out that the victim was Mary Lucille Wilfong, a 23-year-old woman who had been missing since November 19, 1989. Since the woman had been lost at a truck shop for more than 2 days, the case was very complicated. Then her body was found in the woods in a way that sent chills down people's spines. She had been physically abused and then strangled. It was hard to imagine how scary things must have been for her in her last moments. So the police were keen to find the person who had done it. They went looking for people who could have seen Mary. The cops were lucky enough to get some helpful tips. Some people said they would see her at a farmer's market in Forest Park, which is 47 miles south of Atlanta. The detectives learned that she had been seen getting into a tractor trailer with a white man who could not be named. The cops looked everywhere for a suspect. They took DNA samples from Mary's body, but none of the possible suspects matched any of the samples. Even though the cops worked hard on the case, in the end, they had no clues about who could have killed her. In the end, no one knew what happened, but there was still some hope. On March 11, 2019, Monroe County Sheriff Freeman gave the case to Detective Mark Mansfield. He was told to look into the case again. Investigators were able to look at the original data again because of new technology. Mark sent the evidence to the GBI crime lab. The same evidence was also sent to DNA International, a company in Miami, Florida, so that they could find the right candidate. Mansfield contacted Special Agent Tim Burke of the FBI Atlanta team to work on the case together. In early 2023, after more than 30 years, the cops used genetic genealogy to find a match. Larry Paget, a 59-year-old guy who lives in Logatti, Indiana, was named as a suspect. He was probably around 25 years old when he killed Mary Lucille Wilfong, and he used to drive tractor trailers at the time. So finally, a request for his arrest was made. On March 1, 2023, Mark Mansfield and Sergeant Kimian Collivard, an Indiana police officer, went to Washington, Indiana, to get justice for Mary. They caught Larry Paget for killing Mary Wilfong and sexually assaulting her. The FBI Evidence Recovery Team in Washington found more evidence. The GBI crime lab got the DNA evidence and confirmed the match, which showed that Larry was involved in the murder in more ways. Larry is being held in Indiana until the waiver of return can be signed. Once that happens, he will be sent back to Georgia for more steps. Larry probably thought he would never be caught, and that he had been able to kill people for more than 30 years without being caught. It took a long time, but Mary got what she deserved in the end. Jose Frias Olivas was a normal retired man who liked to take walks in the park and hang out with his family. But on that terrible day, he was killed for no reason, which was a tragedy that shook his family and the whole town to its core. His death was not only shocking, but it was also hard to understand. How could someone so nice and quiet be a victim of such a horrible crime, especially in broad daylight and in public? The killing of Frias Olivas, who was powerless and alone at the time, left many people confused and wondering why anyone would choose to kill an innocent person. His sad and sudden death shocked the whole town and his family very much. No one could have thought that a simple walk in the park would end in something so horrible and deadly. There are parts of Western, Hispanic, and Native American traditions in Denver. The community is strong and determined, but this recent act of violence showed that even though crime rates are low and streets are safe, people should always be on guard. The murder of Jose Frias Olivas was a terrible surprise that sent shockwaves through the Denver community. The killer did not give a clear reason for what he or she did, and after the first investigation, it looked like they had vanished without a trace. The crime scene team of the Denver police thoroughly searched the area. During this search, they found just east of Frias Olivas' dead body a single Remington .22 caliber cartridge case on the road. This important piece of evidence gave police a crucial clue that helped them find the people who caused the tragedy. There was also information from people who saw what happened. Several people said they heard 2 or 3 gunshots and saw a lot of people running away in fear after they did. One of the witnesses said something strange that could be a key piece of information in the probe. They said that one of the suspects had tattoos on his face, including one over his eye that looked like the claw marks that are on Monster energy drinks. This piece of information can help detectives narrow down the list of possible suspects and get closer to finding out who killed Frias. Also, police made a big step forward in the case when they found a Ruger handgun in an Acura they had taken. Ballistic tests showed that the .22 shell found at the scene of the crime was from the gun. When it was found out that the gun had been reported stolen, the proof against the suspects got stronger. The investigation also found DNA on the barrel of the murder weapon, which was a key piece of evidence in the case. In September 2016, police found that DNA from the magazine of the murder weapon matched a profile in the combined DNA index system database. This helped them figure out who the murder suspect was. In fact, it went to a guy named Nicholas Lujan. When Nicholas Lujan was arrested for robbery in October 2015, police noticed a unique claw mark tattoo on his face. However, witnesses were reluctant to help with the investigation. They said that Nicholas was a member of the notorious GKI Street Gang and went by the name Keyser. This shows how afraid and hesitant people are to talk, especially when the suspect is a member of a dangerous gang. Because people did not work together, it was harder for the cops to solve the case and give the victim and their family justice. Witnesses were afraid that the accused killer and his friends would hurt them if they came forward and named the suspect. Because the witnesses did not help, the case went cold, and the investigation made little progress in the years after Frias' death. The tip that came in through Crime Stoppers in 2017 was a big break in the case of the murder of Frias Olivas. The source said that Lujan had boasted about the murder and how he had gotten away with it. This new information gave police a very important clue to follow up on and gave them a good place to start their investigation. With this new piece of information, detectives were able to focus on making their case against Nicholas stronger. They talked to more people, looked over the proof, and followed up on leads. In 2018, when Lujan was spending time at the Lumont Correctional Facility for robbery, investigators got a DNA sample from him. This was a big step forward in the case. The DNA sample was the same as the DNA found in the Ruger magazine. This was strong proof that Nicholas was involved in the crime. Also, a witness was able to pick Nicholas out of a picture lineup as one of the people they saw running away from the scene of the crime on the day of the shooting. According to the affidavit, these events were very important in building the case against Nicholas. One of the group's suspects later told police that Nicholas had run away to a nearby apartment and washed his hands with bleach after what happened. He also cleaned the gun, but he forgot to clean the magazine, which turned out to have Nicholas's DNA on it. This information made the case against Nicholas even stronger and helped investigators build a strong case against him. The finding of this important piece of evidence led to Lujan's arrest in 2021, and on March 10, 2023, Nicholas pleaded guilty to 1 count of second-degree murder. The Denver District Attorney's Office said in a news release that he will get his sentence on June 9, 2023. In a news release, Denver District Attorney Beth McCann said she was proud of the work of the Cold Case Unit and the Denver Police Department to help Mr. Frias get justice. McCann admitted that the murder was horrible and praised the police for their hard work and determination in solving the case. In the case of Jose Frias, the Denver Police Department and the Cold Case Unit worked hard to bring justice to his family and loved ones, and we hope that they have found some sort of peace. A writer for the Tahoe Tribune got a scary call on September 28 from someone she did not know. The voice on the other end of the call told the reporter that there was a dead body at the Sugar Pine Point State Park in El Dorado County, California. The writer did not think twice before taking action and telling the sheriff's deputies right away. When detectives got to the spot, they were surprised to find that the tip was right. There in the dining area, the body of a dead woman was lying. She wore a red shirt and pants and looked to be in her mid-30s or early 40s. In the sun, her gold wedding band shone like a star. 2 more rings were on her fingers, and around her neck was a chain with a pendant that looked like a deer. The officers knew right away that the woman had died in a violent way. She had been killed by being hit, and next to her body was a single flip-flop. The police thought that she had probably been chased through the park and lost her other flip-flop in the process. As the detectives looked around for signs, they found a beer bottle near the woman's body. Along with a sexual attack kit and a DNA sample, they took it as proof. They also carefully looked through the woman's clothes for anything that might help them figure out who she was, but they found nothing. The woman did not have any way to prove who she was. Since there were no obvious clues, the body of the woman was taken from the scene and taken to a hospital for an autopsy. The findings of the test were very surprising. It was found that she had been strangled and severely beaten before she died. This proved that she had been the victim of a brutal attack, as the police had thought. Detectives started a full-scale investigation to find out who hurt the woman and bring the person who did it to justice. They looked through missing person reports and talked to people in the area to find any clue that could help them find the person who did it. As the probe went on, the detectives were able to find the 2 people who had called the reporter in the first place. There were 3 of them, and they all said that they had wanted to report it themselves but were afraid to because they had open warrants. None of them were considered suspects in the case. Even though there were a lot of leads, the police still could not figure out who killed the woman. One very good clue showed that she had lived in a hotel in South Lake Tahoe and won a lot of money playing Keno just before she was killed. The detectives looked for clues in area casinos, but they found nothing. As time went on, the case went cold, and no one was ever caught. The woman's name was never found out, and she was buried in Tahoma, California, in an empty grave with the words "unknown female" written on it. It was a sad end for a woman whose life was cut short by a senseless act of violence. Detectives had trouble solving the case of the unnamed woman for decades until 2014, when a new lead came to light. Detective John Gaines, who works for El Dorado County's Cold Case Homicide Unit, decided to solve the puzzle that had been unsolved for so long. As he looked into the case more, he found a piece of evidence that had been missed. It was the victim's chain. It had been called a deer necklace, but Detective Gaines saw that it was actually a chain necklace, which is a Hebrew sign that means life. This made him think that the victim might have been Jewish. With this information in hand, the police asked for help from the Jewish community to solve the case. They talked to several Jewish centers in the area, including the Shabbat Jewish Center of Lake Tahoe and a Shabbat center that serves Folsom and other nearby areas. A Jewish newspaper also printed pictures of the victim's jewelry in the hopes that someone would recognize it and give a tip that would blow the case wide open. The new study gave the case new life, and the detectives kept hoping that they would finally figure out what had been a mystery for so long. In 2015, police finally got some new information about the case. A 61-year-old woman saw pictures of the jewelry in the newspaper and knew it was the same kind her mother wore. She called the police because she thought the unknown woman might be her mother, Patricia Carnahan, who went by that name. To be sure, police dug up the body of the unidentified woman and took a DNA sample to test. When the DNA of the unknown woman and that of the 61-year-old woman who said she was her daughter, they matched. It turned out that the woman was Patricia Carnahan, so the puzzle was over. More research showed that Patricia was from Virginia and that she was 35 when she died in 1979. She had been going to California alone in a red Volkswagen bus. Her family had lost touch with her at some point, and her Volkswagen was later found abandoned at a car showroom in Venice, California. Her family reported her missing about a month after she died, but they did not know that she had already died. After Patricia's name was finally confirmed, her body was given back to her family so she could be buried properly. This gave them some peace of mind after more than 30 years of not knowing what happened to her. When police finally found out who the mysterious victim was, they were faced with an even bigger mystery: who killed Patricia? They had to find the murderer and give the victim justice. The officers started looking into the case with determination. The DNA sample that was taken from Patricia's body all those years ago was tested first, and then a DNA analysis was made. When they looked at the DNA on the beer bottle they found near the body, they found that it was the same as the DNA on Patricia's body. This proved that the killer had used the bottle. Even though the detectives uploaded the DNA profile to CODIS, they were unhappy to find no match. They did not give up, though. In 2022, the Attorney General's office in Washington state decided to take on the huge job of testing all of the untested sexual assault kits in the state. In the storage room of the Spokane Police Department, there were 1,500 untested kits, including the remains of a 1994 sexual attack case. In this case, a homeless woman said that a guy named Harold Carpenter beat her up. Healthcare workers had gathered evidence as part of a sexual assault kit, and police arrested Carpenter at that time. But the case took a strange turn when Carpenter said that the woman and he had agreed to have sexual relations and that she had stolen his wallet. Before letting Carpenter out of jail, detectives took his DNA. But later that week, when they could not find the woman, they had to stop their probe. The woman's sexual attack kit did not get tested until August 2022, when it was sent to the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab as part of a new program in Washington state. At the beginning of February 2023, a shocking fact came to the attention of Spokane police officers. A forensic scientist from the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab told them that the DNA from the 1994 case had been uploaded to CODIS, the FBI's DNA database, and that it matched the DNA evidence from Patricia's case. This meant that Carpenter, the man who was accused of sexually assaulting her in 1994, was the most likely person who killed her. On September 29, 1979, Carpenter had been arrested in Susanville, California, on suspicion of drunk driving, just one day after Patricia's body was found. The detectives, equipped with this information, looked into Carpenter's background as part of their investigation. He had been turned over to the Bonneville County Sheriff in Idaho, where he did time for a burglary charge that had nothing to do with him. Carpenter had a long list of misdemeanors and charges from 1998 to 2018, including drug possession, disturbing the peace, reckless driving, and driving while drunk. Carpenter's story got even worse when police found out that he had been homeless in Spokane since around 2016 and had moved into the Park Tower Apartments, a low-income building for elderly and disabled people. Carpenter was the main suspect in another case of sexual assault in Spokane County in 2018, and he was also accused of unwanted sexual touching in 2022, but no arrest was made in either case. On February 27, 2023, the Spokane Police and the El Dorado County Cold Case Task Force made an arrest that had been a long time coming. Carpenter, who is now 63, had been running from the law for more than 40 years. He was finally caught. He was charged with being a fugitive and put in the Spokane County Jail. He is now going to be sent to California to face a murder charge there. Carpenter went to court for the first time the next day in Spokane. He was ordered to stay in jail with a $1 million bail. Even though the time limit for the 1989 sexual assault case has passed and the victim has since died, the officials are still determined to move forward with Patricia's murder case until Carpenter is finally held responsible for his terrible crimes. The city of Houston is in the middle of Harris County in Texas. It is a busy and diverse place. Houston is known for its famous buildings, diverse culture, and a busy economy. It is a city where dreams come true and the impossible becomes possible. But behind the beauty of the city is a sad and dark story. The events of April 24, 2009, left the people of Houston in shock and confusion. Domalita Alvarez, who was 38 years old, was found dead in the office of her family's car repair shop on B Street in West Houston, Texas on that day. The horrible finding sent shockwaves through the community, leaving them to deal with the sudden death of a loved one. The investigation showed that she had been stabbed more than once, leaving a lot of open questions and a family and community in mourning. Who could have done something so terrible? Why did the killer want to kill Domalita? Before the rescuers got there, she died, so it will be hard for the investigation to figure out what happened. They carefully looked at every part of the scene and did a thorough investigation, but they did not find many clues. Foreign DNA was found at the crime scene, but no one ever said what kind it was. Since no suspects were found, it is thought that there were no matches in the system. Many people kept wondering who was to blame for her premature death because no one knew what happened. The investigation reached a dead end when no suspects came forward. This made the case go cold and left detectives scratching their heads. Even though they worked hard, they were unable to find any new information. The case was still unsolved and wrapped in mystery. In 2021, when the Houston Police Department's Homicide Division Cold Case Squad reviewed the evidence in Domalita's case as part of a case review project, there was a spark of hope after years of not knowing what happened. Thanks to improvements in technology, DNA evidence found at the crime scene helped detectives make a big step forward in the case. The clues took them to George Trevino Cardenas, who had been a suspect for a long time but had been hard to find. No one has told the public how exactly this DNA proof led to him. George Trevino Cardenas was a suspect, and finding him was like finding a needle in a haystack, but detectives did not give up on the case. This time, their persistence paid off when more information linked him to the case after more research. Investigators were slowly putting together the pieces of the puzzle, which gave them a better picture of what happened to Domalita Alvarez. On January 26, 2023, Cardenas was charged following the discovery of new evidence. This was a big step in the case. George Trevino Cardenas, a 50-year-old suspect, was charged with murder in the 185th State District Court for what he was thought to have done to cause Domalita Alvarez's death. He had to face the full force of the law. He was also serving a sentence for a different crime at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, William R. Boyd Unit Prison, which raises troubling questions about how many crimes he has committed. Even so, Cardenas's past convictions did not stop the wheels of justice from turning. Finally, justice caught up with the suspect, and he was paid for both crimes. The news made the town and Alvarez's family feel a little better because they knew the person who did it was off the streets and would never hurt anyone else again. Thanks for staying till here.